20th meeting of the Plan Commission to order. Can we have roll call, please, Meredith?
Jason Carnahan.
Here.
Kellen Dooley. Here. Bill Van Wy. Present. Sandy Harrison. Jerry Yoder.
Yes.
Frank Pulver.
Here.
Suzanne Davis.
Here.
Angie Holt. Here. Tyler Lanning. Alicia Rogers.
Here.
Mike McCarowicz. Andrew Cruz.
Here.
Chris Gallmer. Here. Meredith Wright here.
We'll now stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. We'll now have a moment if someone would like to lead us in a word of prayer.
Let's bow our heads. Father God, it says in your word that where two or more are gathered, you will be here also. We invite you in, Lord, to this meeting so that we can make decisions, Lord, for you and your kingdom, Lord, and also for the residents of this DeKalb County, Lord. And we pray this in Jesus' name, amen.
You should have received the minutes from the April meeting in your packet. If there's no additions or corrections, I would entertain a motion to approve.
I'll move to approve.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the minutes of the previous meeting. All those in favor?
I do have a question.
Oh.
I do have one. I talked to Meredith about it. On page 3, it says Mr. Dooley answered it on one instead of on. She knows the difference, so that's just one word to change. So.
Okay. Now, if there's no other corrections, we would vote to approve, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, same. Minutes are approved. Same with the claims from April in your packet. Would entertain a motion to approve.
I move to approve the claims as presented.
Have a second? I have a motion and a second to approve the claims from April. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same. Claims are approved. Chris, old business?
Nothing.
Okay. New business is petition 2618. During this hearing, the Planning Commission will consider a text amendment to establish development standards and definitions for animal feeding operations and diversified small-scale agriculture. Various minor revisions may be necessary to make these amendments. For example, page numbers, section numbers, etc.
Ready?
Yes, sir.
So the Ordinance Review Committee met to review animal feeding operations and how we currently address these type of facilities in DeKalb County. These would be any type of facility that is under the IDEM regulations for confined feeding operations. I'm not going to read through all of this that's new, but what has been proposed is definitions for an animal feeding operation, and then diversified small-scale agriculture, and then removing hobby farming from our ordinance. The hobby farming is in the UDO in the definitions, but not anywhere else. So I'm not sure what the use or what the purpose of having hobby farming in the definitions was if you're not going to have it as a permitted use or in the ordinance elsewhere. So removing that. And basically what we did is combine hobby farming with, we combined hobby farming with animal feeding operations. So if you can just take a look at that. And then on page 2, showing where we added animal feeding operations and then diversified small-scale agriculture, and what the differences are between the two. For the development standards, I guess the one thing that's important to note is that the animal thresholds are anything between, for cattle and calves, 25 to 299, for swine or small ruminants, sheep or goats, 50 to 599, poultry, 100 to 29,999, and horses, 10 to 499. Setbacks for the front, the side, and the rear would all be 100 feet, and the setback for anything that would be adjacent to a residential zoning district is 300 feet. The justification there, the committee decided that there was a need for standards that fell below the IDEM CFO regulations. And how currently we review these projects is through our technical review committee, through our improvement location permit application. So the health department reviews it for septic connections when applicable. In a lot of cases that it's just not required due to the absence of restroom facilities. The highway department reviews it and approves the driveway access on county roads. NDOT reviews and approves for state roads. The county surveyor and drainage board reviews and approves the drainage plans and regulates the off-site water. And the soil water conservation district reviews it for the soil water pollution prevention plan and ensures compliance with IDEM's construction stormwater general permit. So we don't issue any permits until we receive approvals from those four departments. The ordinance review committee was tasked with evaluating this use and developing enforceable standards for AFOs. And the committee did consider several regulatory approaches, including the minimum acreage requirements with increased setbacks, minimum acreage with existing setbacks, and increased setbacks alone. And after that review, the committee determined that it was most effective to establish just increased setbacks in conjunction with the animal unit thresholds, and then creating definitions for animal feeding operations and diversified small-scale agriculture. The committee met, I believe, Jason, was it 3 or 4 times? At least 3 times, yeah. In committee to review this and have lengthy discussions, and spirited discussions, I would say, about these operations and how to move forward. So with that, I'd ask for comments or questions from the Plan Commission at this time.
And Chris, on the list of properties that you included with that, those would be considered AFOs then, under the new standard, or how does that work?
Correct. So, and thank you for bringing that up. The list that is incorporated in your packet is the list that we currently have from 2020 to 2026. Anything after March is what we received complaints on. And I say complaints because it's been more, I wouldn't say complaints, but based off of just speculation and hearsay more so than actual complaints on projects. So what I did here was just show the projects that we currently have, or not the projects, but the sites that are currently in existence, what their minimum acreages are, what the building square foot size is, the head count, and then how far they are from the nearest foundation of a residence.
The ones that are highlighted, those, says gray rows were before complaints. So the complaints you've gotten have, and since that, well, the last one on the list there, at Graber.
Right. And like I said, complaints probably isn't the word. I guess it would be more
How about concerns or
questions and concerns. Thank you about those projects.
in regards to setback?
There's been some that's regard to setback, some is regards to the disposal of deceased animals, manure storage, manure management. where the projects are located in general. Setbacks was part of that discussion.
We had some discussion on the committee about the foundation versus the property line.
Right.
Maybe you can capture where we ended up on that, on the to the property line, right?
Yeah, we ended up 100 feet from the property line versus the residential structure. And partly because I think that we realized, I guess, I'm trying to think back a month or two ago, but, and feel free to speak up to everyone else that was on the committee. We felt as though that the setbacks from property lines made more sense from an enforcement part of things than from the residence itself.
Well, and you can see, I mean, on the list of the distance to the nearest residence, every one of them exceeds what we've proposed already. Just the.
To the foundation.
Correct.
Right.
So, I mean, they're all over 100 feet. One is at 100 feet, but the rest of them are well over. But,
Yeah.
you know, we just saw that the lot size that had potential to get these buildings is getting smaller. So that was just our thought was if the lot's gonna get smaller, we wanna make sure we put a little buffer on so it's not jammed into a corner of somewhere where it wouldn't be ideal to have it. With
Yeah,
existing
and-
homes
And the committee did some calculations too, just to figure out what the average size of these operations are, which doesn't just include the building, but includes the building, the areas that they need to maneuver, where truck traffic comes in and out, any type manure storage, any type of generator facilities, and that's about 4 to 5 acres. And so on and obviously we're talking a square parcel here, but you need about 10 total acres. With our 100-foot setbacks, that only gives you about 4.9 acres left to build on. So, you know, even with these standards, someone's still gonna need average 10 acres to put these projects.
And one of the other reasons we put it back 100 feet is that they had access to all sides of the barn. Instead of 10 feet, we wanted them to access.
Right, so 10 feet,
Yeah, and you get that, and
Yeah.
instead of 100 feet from a foundation, that might only give them 10 feet in. We wanted them farther away from the barn.
potentially, I mean, it depends on if there's an existing primary structure on the property. If there's an existing primary structure, then yes, it could be 10 feet, but if it's
Yeah, from
just
the
that
neighbor.
structure, yeah.
Yeah, or from the property.
Typically, they're gonna be farther away than that, just because of, especially the last few that we've seen, the engineering drawings have come in with a significant area between them because of the drainage areas that are on either side of the buildings.
You guys come up with the numbers of the animals,
What?
of the animals, like 10 horses being over 10 horses, 100 chickens.
So we had looked at other counties, what they had done, such as Kosciuszko, LaGrange. I remember who else we had looked at.
Looked at Steuben's as well.
Steuben as well. So there are other counties that have ordinances in place or are working on their own as well. And this was just kind of, I guess, an average number of what they had either passed or were working on passing at this point.
And we looked at too, what these numbers mean from going from a hobby farm or what we changed to diversified small-scale agriculture, to where you're not making a commercial profit on it versus it ticking it into a commercial enterprise.
I mean, some of it was just kind of what made sense too. Like,
Yeah.
you have 10 cattle, it could be like 4-H and freezer beef or whatever. But if you have 400 or 200 or, you know, whatever, that's going to be something that's more commercial than you're not going to eat that many. That kind of thing is what we tried to talk through. So what makes sense could be used or, you know, shown in whatever in a year. Any more discussion from, or questions from anybody on the board that's not on the committee, have questions or?
I will just raise that the committee did look at also things that we just can't enforce, right? Like we can't enforce potholes on county roads. That's something the commissioners through the highway department would have to enforce. We don't have the manpower, I guess, to enforce where this manure gets sold and gets placed on properties. There are other state and federal guidelines and authorities that can enforce those things that we just need to, I guess, for lack of a better term, stay out of, right? I mean, we decided that just wasn't something the county needs to get into as far as enforcement and regulation on.
And another thing is there's several other counties that are arguing with IDM and the Chem department that's their responsibility because of it's the waterways where they are forced protection, and they are trying to get them to step up more because we have no authority.
To the state level, you mean?
At the state level, we have no authorities or that kind of deal and everything. So there's other counties that's battling this issues that don't have the authority as do the work for it and everything. So there's other counties having the same issues as we have. So
right.
So is the state, are you saying that the state is understaffed, don't have the people,
I have no idea.
all of the above? Or is that?
I would have no idea. I mean, I just think the state is who they are, and you can call the state to regulate open dumping, and they're not going to come out and do anything about it. I mean, you guys have more interactions with the state than I do on those type of things, and you know, if you're not, they're just not going to come out, right?
Tax dollars at work?
Well, I don't know if it's that. I think that everyone is stretched to their limit. I mean, if the Plan Commission and County Commissioners would say, okay, Plan Commission, you're now going to go enforce manure application and count the number of animals that are out there and be out there when it rains to see where the drainage goes, no one else is getting a permit, right? Like, I'm going to be out there every day. So it's just
practical.
And it's impractical, yeah.
Well, that's where these ones that are in gray here, that's where the neighbors were policing those different buildings and reporting stuff that they felt wasn't quite kosher. That's probably what's going to happen with the rest of them too. If they see water run off where it shouldn't be running off, or they see something out of the ordinary, I'm sure there'll be some more gray areas on this sheet.
Maybe.
By putting a restriction of 100 feet off the property line, and that's not going to take care of complaints. You're still going to be getting complaints, Chris.
Yep, I don't disagree.
Was odor, I'm trying to think back to the committee, odor is part of the discussion, but I think with different types of farming, there can be different levels of odor, right? I mean, and that's why you might not move it 5 foot from a foundation. You'd want at least 100 foot from a property line.
Maybe. I mean, I think
Or maybe that
my philosophy on living in the country and odor is, you live in the country and there's odor, right? But yeah.
you want to bring up that correspondence now or later? We'll now open it up to the public to speak on this proposal for or against or whatever. State your name, address. Try to keep it fairly brief and to the point. We could.
And then whoever's up first, please just make sure the microphone is on.
Okay, Tim Haynes, 1499 County Road 40. We are one of these, well, we're not on the list, but we should be, number-wise, but we were earlier. The 100-foot setback, I don't see that being an issue. One question I do have on that is to the foundation. So how does driveway or parking area between that and the 100 affect that? Because I know there's been questions that it's to the driveway, not to the foundation. So, well, from the property line to the foundation, but if you have a drive in between there, how does that?
Just a building.
Yeah,
So you're fine.
but you're good there. You're talking about the state agencies. If you put this into place and add these numbers, you know, the state chemist's office covers this area now. So now if you put an ordinance in, does that move the responsibility to you on the head count and stuff? Would be a question I would have, because, you know, that's the question. I mean, if there is a question or concern as to if somebody's over the number count, who's responsible for checking that out? I think at this point right now, it goes back to the state, not EPA or not IDEM. You know, that's the ones that are above the levels. So, but if you guys put an ordinance in, does that bring the responsibility to you, even though you don't want it? Because now you put the numbers in, I guess is my question.
It does.
Yeah, so you might have to learn to count, you know. So.
We'd be counting, we did the calculations once, Charity in my office, and we'd be counting 7 days a week, 24 hours a day on 27,000 chickens.
Yeah.
And that's just not practical. So the committee needs to realize that too, that if we get a complaint that someone's at 30,001 chickens,
yeah.
What do you want us to do about that, right? Like,
At that point, I mean, one step would be to report it to the state IDEM. They're violating IDEM's rules at that point, probably.
Right.
At 30,001, but.
correct.
But if it's,
Correct, but he's right, that our numbers are requiring us to enforce that as well.
right.
And I don't have a problem with the numbers. I understand how you got them. You know, my one concern too as a producer, if you come to me and say, prove me your numbers, well, I'm under that, you know, sign a paper, I don't know if that's doing us any justice. You know, I can show you, with our robot farm, I can pull up numbers and show you I'm milking 245 cows today. So, but you know, if you don't have that, are you just asking somebody to say, yeah, I'm under the 300 or the threshold?
Well, I mean, I think that if there is a reasonable belief about a violation, then we would pursue it like a violation of anything, the other ordinance, and potentially if it's serious enough, you might have to go to court and get an order to go count.
Well,
I mean, because it is private property, so it, you know, but I think going to court would be an option. Hopefully we wouldn't have to do that, but.
It's the only option we have, yeah.
so good luck.
Hi, I'm Rick Gerke. I live on 4721 County Road 64. And they just put in a barn, chicken barn, a year ago next to us. And the 100 feet is nothing for the smell. You go out there, that smell goes a half mile. I have a daughter that has bad lungs because of COVID. I have a granddaughter who has asthma real bad. I have a neighbor that has lung cancer. And we're all within, a little bit more than a stone throw away from this barn. And we've all been out there 20, 25 years. And this barn, or people that put in the barn, has been there 2 years. So there is 6 houses within that area that's getting affected by this barn. Now, I admit, it's not as bad as I thought it was going to be. But still, we've been out there 20-some years. They come out there 2 years, and they throw this barn in. Now, is that fair? I just think you need to go out and look to see where these barns are going in at. And think of the people that are living around them and how fair it is to them. We've been out there, like I said, 20-some years, and they come out and live there for 2 years. I know they have a right to put in a barn, have a living, but we've been out there a long time too. So I think you do need to think about these barns, and the water don't stay within 100 feet, the smell don't stay within 100 feet. And we all suffer from it, but I do admit, it doesn't smell as bad as I thought it would. But,
Does that smell every day, or is there certain days?
well, for us, depends which way the wind's blowing.
Of course.
Right, and we're west of it. Of course, it's gonna be more, but like I said, to me, it's just not fair. I know they need to make a living. That's true, but we've been out there 20-some years. Should we get punished for it? No. That's all I can say. But really, think about it. Go out and look to see where they're putting them in at. How many houses are affected by it? People's lives. When it does smell, my granddaughter's got to go in the house. Can't be out in that smell. Thanks.
I just want to remind everyone that we're here to talk about the setbacks and not permitting the use itself. The use is permitted by right now with 30-foot setbacks off the property line or 10-foot setbacks off the property line. We're not here to talk about whether we're going to permit them or we're not going to permit them. They're already permitted. We're here to talk about revising the ordinance to tighten up the definitions and tighten up the setbacks. Just so everyone's aware, and in the audience, what the Plan Commission is here to talk about tonight is not whether we're going to permit them or not. Okay.
My name is Russell Grime. I live at 7619 County Road 68. The property was purchased by my father in 1978. I've effectively lived on that property my entire life. When we moved out into the rural area, there were certain expectations. And there are farms out there, and that's what you're buying into when you purchase rural property. But when you buy next to 100 acres of wheat or corn, and it is then changed from its primary use from one type of agriculture to another without any consideration for those who live there, it is a problem. And so when you say 100-foot setback, that doesn't cover the damage that is going to be done to our property values and to our enjoyment of life. You think that because we live in the country, we should just have to put up with it because we've made the decision to live in the country. No, we made a decision to live the way it was when we purchased. It is the responsibility of the county commissioners to keep our property values high and to make sure that our quality of life is maintained. We can't do it ourselves. So your job as county commissioners is to defend us, to protect us and our property values and our way of life. And saying, well, you live in the country, you just have to live with it, is not your job. To the contrary, your job is to protect us and represent us. So 100 feet is not far enough. It's not even a start of far enough. And when you say 100 feet is okay, or you say, well, they're going to take 5 acres to set up their operation, so they're going to need at least a minimum of 10 acres. That's not what this says. It doesn't say a minimum of 10 acres. It says that they can have 299 head of cattle. But it doesn't give an acreage. Is that on 1 acre? Or is it on 50 acres? This is so vague as to be useless. So if you want to set setbacks, set them back meaningfully so that people aren't losing the enjoyment and the value of their property. And set a restriction that will keep people from cramming these animals into tiny spaces and thus devaluing our property and our homes. That's your job. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Susan Catterall. I live at 5400 South, 350 East, Hamilton, Indiana. I'm a Steuben County resident. I work with an environmental group that handles the tri-state area. In the past several months, I've been called to DeKalb County to file, and I have filed complaints, 2 with the State Chemist Office and 1 with the Indiana Department of Environment Management. The one with IDEM was so bad that they said they would be out the next day to investigate it. This was one of the farms, probably on your sheet, I would imagine. And I just want to say that this doesn't go far enough and that this has to be reined in. And we're trying to do that in Steuben County right now because we have a real problem, a real problem. I test water. That's what I do. And I'm telling you, the numbers are bad. When I tested down here this last month after a big rain coming out of a barn, the ammonia level was 10.5. It's not supposed to be any higher than 0.21. At 0.21, IDEM says you got a big problem. It was 10.5. The phosphorus level was 2.5. It's not supposed to be any higher than 0.05. I even contacted the DeKalb County Health Department, and they said they would go and look because they can also file a complaint with IDEM. So when you're looking at these ordinances, you need to think about the pollution too, not just the animal numbers, but it's a manure issue. We have a manure issue. Steuben County, it's horrible. Before the commissioners could sign this manure ordinance that we just passed, they put up 4 barns as fast as they could put them up because we didn't grandfather in anything. Everything that's already up doesn't count. They put up 4 massive barns just so they could beat this ordinance because they know what's coming. So I'm just telling you that this is something you need to address, and it needs to be addressed now because the numbers that we're getting for our water testing, they're horrible numbers. They're bad, horrible numbers. And all this water eventually goes where I'm at testing. It's going into the St. Joe River. It's going to Fort Wayne. It's going to the Maumee River, and it's going to Lake Erie. And we all know what the problem with Lake Erie is. So I'm just saying that you're on the right track with this. And this is, and like in Steuben County, we're starting small, but this is something that we want to build on. We don't want this to be the end of our ordinances. This is something we want to build on because I'm telling you, this is a big problem, a really big problem.
Hi, I'm Bob Sullivan, 6618 County Road 75. Much like you've heard from the other people, I have concerns over the change that's occurring in the county. I think the increased setbacks is a great start. You can pass the rule tomorrow, make it go, increase the setbacks, but it's not enough. Next week, let's start talking about bigger setbacks. Let's start doing that. You know, immediately going to 100-foot, 300-foot setbacks is a start. Better than 30-foot, but it's not enough. You know, and the exact same concerns as, you know, everyone else. One other concern as I read in the proposal, there's a 300-foot from residential. Is that only from like R1 type of designation, not a property with a residence? Okay, it'd be nice if there could be consideration of increased setbacks if there is an adjoining property with residence instead of being an R1 or residential zone. Thanks.
Hi, Jonas Edgar, 6858 County Road 75. Lived in the county for 44 years. Parents lived out there, County Road 75, for probably about 50 years. Right now, there's at least 15 of these operations that aren't on this list out on the east side of the county. And I don't know if they have to be permitted or non-permitted. I know of at least 15 of them that aren't on here that fall in these categories of the 300 or the 299 or less cattle. I'm in a situation where my neighbors have contacted me. They want to put in these operations. One's on a 5.7 acre lot, that's up to my property. The other one's on a 9-point-some acre lot. And my house is in the center of my property, so if both of them build the operations that they want to build, it's going to affect our quality of life very significantly. I see how it affects my parents out on 75 on the other side of the bridge. There's no manure management out there. It is terrible. And I'm just going down a rabbit hole. Been uneducated about all this, but the more and more I learn, the more and more I'm in disbelief. I've talked to a lot of people. I could have probably 500 signatures for a petition within 7 days in this county. And I think the setbacks are a good start, but 100 feet, I don't think it's good enough. If we could do the setbacks with solar, the way they had them, and that'd be larger than what we have for any of this, I think that'd be a start. Thank you.
Scott Seiler, 5038 County Road 52. Sorry, you guys get to see me again here. I really do appreciate the work by the committee. It is a good start. And honestly, let's just all be honest for 1 second. We wouldn't need any of these rules or any regulations or any extra enforcement if they would do what they said they would do. We fought the one beside our house, and all the things I brought up to the committees and commissioners at that time, fears we had have been all realized. The manure is just shoved outside, it's left outside, been outside all winter, it runs down the drainage right to the creek. The abusers of the system is what it's all about. I appreciate your work. Again, it's a good start, but we got to get it further away, and we've got to reference it to existing residences that are close to these barns. There is times it stinks so bad, we just have to go inside. Now, it's not all the time, but I mean, it's horrible bad. And I just appreciate your consideration to those that live out here where the people coming in, putting these in, don't really care about being neighborly. That's what it all amounts to. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Dr. Jim Smith, address 15936 Rupert Road, Graybill. While we're comparing sizes of our property, my family has owned continuously owned property in DeKalb County since 1855. I farm in southeast DeKalb County. We also own property. In addition to that, I'm an international swine consultant. I work in China, United States, helping large swine producers. So I understand where we are with raising large-scale livestock. But there's two questions I have for you. One, has the committee addressed adjacency? Now, we're fearful of CAFOs because they're the boogeyman. But if we have two 20-acre properties that both have 27,000 chickens on it, collectively it's a CAFO. So has the committee addressed the number of animals we have in a section or number of animals on touching property? The second point that's been brought up very eloquently by other people, has the committee addressed some of the same things we talked about on the solar, of having buffer strips, planting trees, ways that we can make some of these properties a little more pleasing, address some of the wind issues. I know in Iowa, they're doing a lot with windbreaks around CAFOs to help with wind flow, have some of the particulate in the air fall out before it goes across the property line. So I was wondering if the committee had looked at buffer strips and trees in addition to the setbacks.
Hi there, I am Beth Seiler, and I'm from 5038 County Road 52. And yes, we were here a couple of years ago, and we had a couple of hundred signatures because we wanted just a little bit more scrutiny with these barns when they were coming in. They are commercial operations, and they do work with corporations. They're not just family farms. So my question is, how do we prevent these properties from being subdivided and then multiple farms being put in, these high-intensity agriculture? Because it does affect our property values and our quality of life. And I do agree that you are here to protect us, and we just would like a little more scrutiny, even if the county council can review these, get everyone involved, and just have more hands, so we don't have the issues we had. We can tell you more specifics if you're interested, but it's not really this week.
Hi, I'm Corey Fogel. I live at 5388 County Road 51. I just wanted to propose something to the council just to consider. You talked about how enforcing animal numbers is going to be really, really difficult on the county level, and I 100% agree. And you may have already discussed this, but would it be easier to enforce for the county if you looked at average structure size per number of animals? Like most of the chicken barns out by us are the same size. So could the county limit structure size so that they couldn't fit more animals in, right? Because they're not going to cram 50,000 chickens or hogs into a building that is suited for numbers underneath regulatory limits. Just something to think about. You guys may have already discussed that, what you were planning on. Thank you.
Anybody from the audience wish to speak before we close the public comment portion? Okay, we'll close public comment portion and continue on with the findings or whatever of.
Well, the only thing that I'd like to add is that we did receive from the Silers an email that went out to, I forwarded it on to the whole plan commission this morning, so I think everybody got it. And everybody read it, I assume. I can read it if, Jason, if you want me to, or if you can just all acknowledge that you received it. That way, it was sent on.
You don't need to read it. I mean, everybody on the committee got it.
Okay.
And you can make it part of the record for tonight, maybe?
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
As for a text amendment or anything, there's not really findings. I mean, I guess there is a jurisdictional finding, but then there's ordinance requirements to consider. Like Andrew can explain the process.
I guess, I mean, would it be appropriate to have any of the committee members discuss whatever they would want to from the public discussion if they want to?
Yeah.
At this point, maybe this would be a way to handle that.
Absolutely.
If the public discussion prompted
Yeah, I had a couple of
anything.
items. So I heard a couple of themes. I guess one of them is enforcement, and that's really not within the realm of the discussion here, although, as we mentioned before, the Plan Commission does try to make rules that are enforceable. And we did discuss in the committee that some things we had discussed wouldn't be enforceable. It's nothing we could follow up on or that we could count or whatever, so we decided not to put something in it because it just wasn't practical. I think the other element, and maybe Chris, you can help as well, is on the manure control. And again, this is part of an enforcement thing. What the justification and the departments that are going to review the various components of the project, can you speak to that? That's included as part of the animal feeding operations and
so,
like the drainage board's responsibility for some of that at least?
Yeah, so part of it is the Plan Commission or the Plan Commission's zoning ordinance is for siting of structures and uses, right?
Mm-hmm.
So with that, we can't review drainage, what the health department reviews, driveway locations, and the soil water pollution prevention plan. So we rely on those other departments to review those applications and have those technical skills to approve those. It does go to the full drainage board, which is the 3 commissioners plus 2 residents of the county, for approval for the drainage plans. But again, as we've talked, we did discuss how do we review or how do we enforce complaints that come from people spreading manure or manure being stored for extended periods of time when there's already state enforcement agencies for those issues. And I think the people that are here that can speak to that can speak way more eloquently than I can about that, so. That answer your question?
Yeah, well, and the expectation is that we're writing this with the expectation that people are gonna follow it, and that there's a whole nother course that takes place and different enforcement agencies that are responsible to enforce that. But we're writing this with the expectation that people are gonna comply. And do everything we can to make sure that they are held to compliance.
I think it's these, the smaller operations that that IDEM isn't involved in, that maybe is what we should be looking at a little closer as far as the building structures where they can hold their manure, hold it in a tank or in a certain area where they're not gonna get runoff. And then I think maybe we could do something there as far as the actual building, you know, part of manure retainment and different things like, could definitely be done better.
And I'm gonna rely on the committee that was there, the four of you guys, to step in and discuss that, because it was all, I mean, some of that was discussed of how do we do that? You know, we don't, does the Plan Commission want to get into manure management practices? And I think that's what the Plan Commission is reviewing.
That's a very slippery slope of regulating already permitted uses down to the minute detail, because then we have to do that on every use, not just ag. Has to go into all of our industrial uses, and I mean, are we gonna monitor all of that stuff as well? We don't have the power to do what we do now, the manpower. We definitely can't send Chris into a factory and say, well, I think you know, your particulate level's too high, or you know, that's not anything that we're here for. And so I don't know how we would regulate an already permitted use clear down to that level. You know, I mean, if somebody that has 10 cattle can pollute just as quicker than somebody with 400.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. If they put up a small building, it should still have some containment areas for the manure, so it's not let out.
I mean, I don't disagree. I just don't know how we can control that.
That would be in the land use when they apply with their building. They should have drawings and tell you how what they're gonna put in for holding tanks or holding bunkers that's gonna hold that.
That would be under the development plan, and we don't look at that until that development plan comes through.
Right,
So
but I'm
that's
saying
not,
that would be part of it.
that's not part of the initial process.
No, but that would be part of the permitting. That would be part of it, though, that we would look at later.
The Plan Commission would have to require that as part of the plans.
Mm-hmm.
Public portion is closed.
Yeah, I was gonna say. We can't, I mean, unless the board wants to reopen the public comment, then that's up to you guys if somebody wants to make that motion.
I mean, you can, the Plan Commission can add, right, like anything they want to this. They could come down and say that retention needs to be in the front versus the back.
Right.
You need to have manure holding areas that are concrete and this and that. Committee, I mean, speak up, please.
What does the development plan currently require at a minimum, besides building layout and the access, and what else? Is that it, just the?
The basics and showing where the, you know, they have to meet all these other standards, right? So like they'd have to have a drainage plan, a SWIP plan, so water pollution prevention plan if they're over an acre, which most are. So they would have to have that information. But if you want to get into, if if you would want to take Jerry's recommendation, it would need to be added to this so we can make sure we're checking that box.
I have a question about what the county soil and water does. Like Susan mentioned, water testing and finding really high levels of contaminants that get into the waterways. Is there any testing done by?
That'd be the health department.
That's health department?
I believe so.
Yeah, the DeKalb County Soil and Water Conservation District basically helps to manage programs to help with soil health, with water health, with conservation across the area. They don't go out and do, they have some programs where they do go out and monitor, but it's not like the health department, where if there's an issue on water quality itself, that would fall under the health department's jurisdiction.
So if somebody finds somebody doing testing around any of these operations, if they found high levels, would they turn it over to the health department?
I would think health department and maybe IDEM would be my first two thoughts. I haven't really had to deal with any of it yet. I think those would be the, yeah. And the health department might have numbers of who to report it to at the state level too.
I know there've been a couple of concerns expressed about barn size and equaling lot size and such as well. But there are industry standards, there are Humane Society standards on square footage per animal out there. There are many university studies on it that, looking at these barn sizes, they just don't put up on a whim. They look at those square footages, they utilize development individuals, engineers to help develop these barns to meet those humane square footage. So it's not just cramming as many animals into a small space as possible. Those are the industry standards for square footage for those animals. So that's why we get some of these barn sizes that we do.
With that being said, and going back on to what Jerry had to say, if we know how many animals are roughly going to be in a square foot area, can we have a manure containment section based off of those industry standards that we could force them to have if they have a barn that's so big that the containment center has to be so big?
You could. I mean, there are calculations to approximately figure out how much manure each animal's going to produce a day, a year, however have you. So there are calculations to figure out how much manure there would be. It would just be understanding how often those pits were cleaned out, who was taking them, and how much it would have to be stored in there at a time. So
I understand that, but at least it does something instead of just having them put onto wherever where they're going to have rainfall comes and just washes it out. I mean, it's at least a step in the direction of trying to contain some of the pollution or the manure going into our water source. That's something we could do, right, Chris? I mean, we can.
Exactly what IDEM does over the number.
Yes, so I think we should.
You're proposing that we would do something similar, just scaled down, take their numbers and scale it down per that grouping of animal sizes?
Yeah, just be like, say we have a barn for, I don't know, this is horses, for example, of, I don't know what the numbers are, I don't know where it went, say 30 horses in a barn. We know how big that's roughly going to be, or how big that's going to be, and how many manure a day. I don't know, I'm not a farmer, but you can calculate how much manure a day is going to be coming from those 30, possibly those 30 horses, to know on the storage of what could be stored there for, I don't know, how many days it needs to be stored there.
Jason, do you know what items requirement, how many days of storage you're supposed to have?
180 days.
180 days, that's what I thought. You'd have enough for 180 days with no runoff. You have to have it, so.
I live just east of Lobs, which is, they have thousands of hogs. And, you know, IDEM works with him. And I very seldom, the only time I ever smell anything is when he cleans and pumps into the lagoons. But other than that, I don't, very seldom ever smelling. And he's, you know, like I said, he's working with IDEM. So if we could have some kind of a structure for farmers that are under that, where IDEM's not involved, I think we could take care of a lot of smell complaints.
If we required some sort of manure management program submitted, just like the other programs, do we have the expertise to even be able to evaluate whether those are
That was my
appropriate
question,
or
was
not?
who's qualified to do it? And
We'd have to hire like a third party to come in and review those, right? Like, to make
We
sure.
have a Purdue Extension person.
I don't get paid enough.
Okay, all right.
I mean, there's just not the, there's
I mean,
just
with
not
the,
Maybe Purdue expert.
with the increasing number of barns, we would have to have somebody full-time. And that's, I don't know how feasible that is. But definitely doesn't need to fall under Chris's office.
I think we're talking about two different things here. I think Jerry and I are talking about just having a containment section, not quite a manure management plan. But you can have that like the IDEMIC, you have to have this be so big that you can at least store it. I understand,
Like
but
what
there's gonna be
Alicia's
more
saying, like, it depends
into
on
it.
how long that sit there, the manure sits there, how long it's taken, or how often it's taken away. So you do have to have I think it would lead to a manure management plan.
I'd hate to dictate any minimums, because if they're changing it out or taking it away more frequently, then you're gonna have an excessive size, and we're just don't have the expertise. It's an operational plan and a structure combined.
Right. See what you're saying.
Yeah, you're saying that, but see, like this spring, you know, you got an operation there and you get 11 inches of rain in 3 weeks. That kind of holds some of the manure you're hauling out there, and you might want that extra storage. And two, so you know, you get, that's another issue. I mean, this has been an extreme wet spring, but you know.
Yeah, well, if we required a plan, it would include the calculations for how many animals and what the size needed to be and whether it was covered and operationally, how often that would get removed, but we'd have to have an expertise to be able to evaluate whether that's gonna be sufficient.
Well, yeah, the accuracy of that plan has to be reviewed by somebody and make sure it's accurate.
Well, that's something that is not for tonight. We're going to have to look at it, but you know, we should move on to what we were supposed to be here on the meeting for tonight, and because unless we want to put a manure plan in it, but we don't have the information right now, we're going to have to do the research for this, and I think we should follow up on it, but that wasn't our goal for tonight, too.
Yeah, I agree with that. I'm looking at, like, the drainage board approves the drainage plan, but are there rules and guidelines that they have to use?
There's guidelines that they follow, state guidelines, that the drainage board has to follow, that the surveyor has to use to calculate the runoff and all that, and the drainage board reviews and approves that.
That's more of like rain runoff, not manure runoff.
Like roof
Drainage
size
stuff.
and how much
Yes.
rainwater is gonna go off. It's not the manure or the urine.
Nope.
Yeah, that's what I'm asking. Is there anything
Yes,
that
it's very,
regulates that gets approved before?
Regulates what?
The urine and the manure runoff.
Like when
Manure
there's,
runoff.
when
No,
there's
that's,
11 when
the
there's
drainage
11
board is
inches.
strictly the rain from the sky
Okay,
to roofs,
so
how
then-
that gets.
So then who looks at what Jerry said, or I'm sorry, what Bill said about 11 inches of rain in how many weeks? And then the runoff from that. What regulations are there about that?
At a county level?
Yeah.
There are none. There are none. I mean, the health
Should there be?
department,
Should there
the
be?
health department, that's up, well, that's
And
an
that's
issue
not
for the.
for tonight.
That's an issue for the county commissioners to decide if there
That's
needs
not
to be
anything for
another,
tonight, just.
another department added to regulate and enforce that, but,
Well,
know,
this is
my-
making, okay, go ahead.
go ahead.
I was just going to say, what this is doing, it is improving what we've done, what we had in place, but it sounds like there's more work to be done in making sure that we don't have contaminated water in our streams and rivers from
I think the committee
properties in
can speak
DeKalb.
to what we all discussed during those committee meetings to see if they want to table this and move it, have more of those discussions. I will say that, you know, one thing the committee is going to be working on full steam ahead now is the data center ordinance that's on moratorium until October. So I wouldn't foresee this coming back in the next before October, with how we're gonna be full steam ahead on that, and then just day-to-day stuff. I mean, Helen, when I talked to you and was gonna propose we bring this in June, you were like, no, bring it now. So this is why we're here now.
I mean, I don't think anybody in the audience is against this. I think people are wanting more get to more to it. So I don't see a problem with going ahead with this and then coming back and revisiting. At least this is something starting the process of it. Because if we don't approve it today and we table it until October, November, more of these can come in and get permitted in without at least having these. That's the minimum setbacks that we have now. We can always come back and change it later, correct? So.
Yeah, I mean,
We should get the
I think we could
minimum
only add to it.
setback.
it's an amendment,
anything.
that we're amending what we have now, so that we can add conditions, add amendments, you know, as we go.
Then get our committee together and see what else we can move forward to.
Yeah, I mean, I'll save this for
But the one gentleman did bring a point that I never thought of, is how many's too many on 100 acres? If you do this in 10 acres, and this 10 acres, and this in 10 acres, I've never even thought of that.
Well, and I've gone back and forth on that, and I'm sure the people that are right next to it are very anti, but would you rather have centralized animals to control, or scattered everywhere animals to control? There's two sides to that coin. Does it make sense to put a lot of animals in a little area, especially if the manure's going off-site? Because none of these we're not dealing with manure on site of any of these, but it's all going off-site. So would we rather have, a congregated area of impact, or impact everywhere? So I see what you're saying about multi-units, close together. And that depends on the zoning too. I mean, if it's, if somebody takes a track in A1 and cuts it up, they can't.
Jason, it needs to be bigger than 10 acres then.
Oh, we don't even have a proposed acreage.
Well, I'm just saying that's what was put out, is minimum of 10 acres. And.
Well, that was based on calculations on setback sizes.
I think you guys looked at the number of feet involved and how that would work out on acreage, and if you had to take a truck and turn it around, right? Wasn't that part of the discussion? How much acreage would be needed to actually take a semi-truck in and out, and
We did touch on the density question a little bit in the committee, and decided sort of to, part of Jason's point is we really weren't in a position to move language forward, but some of the things that other communities are doing, not necessarily nearby or in Indiana, but looking at, say, a square mile, have a density calculation, so many animal units per square mile, is it 1,000, is it 2,500, whatever, and I don't even know that we'd have to map it all out to see what the density is of what we have, but that's sort of this question, and I think if we were to do something like that, it would have to be in that kind of manner, and to Jason's point, which is the devil's in the details.
Well, another thing too, and I'm still, if you centralize it, instead of having one here and one here and one here and centralize it, then you have item in it, because they have the more numbers. They have regulations, where if we have these all splattered out, we don't have no regulations in there, and that,
I didn't want it regulated if it was separate parcels.
No, but if they, like we were discussing, instead of having four chicken farms, have it all one under one roof, then you got your regulations.
Well, that's not what we're talking about.
Well, I know.
You're in two separate, you're talking about an actual confined feeding operation, has regulations.
Yeah. But that's why I'm trying to say, we're getting ahead of ourselves, but how many can we put in a mile? Down there, 10 acres, you got quite a bit of acres. If you put them every 10 acres, that's quite a bit.
How about if we just do a moratorium on it until we get it decided on? Think that would work?
That's another, that was discussed in committee, and putting a moratorium on a permitted use is, an already permitted use is a pretty dangerous precedent to set, we thought at committee, because it's been a permitted use forever.
I think this is good. This is an improvement. I think any of the other things we discussed would take a lot more assessment and research to determine whether it's even feasible to implement anything additional. But I think that's an improvement, and I think it would be good to move forward with it.
You could even make an official vote and make an official motion to request the committee review manure plans or something. Or size of building or something, size of building plan or something on manure if you wanted to.
I think the size of acreage.
Sure, that too.
Jason, you said that this, what the committee came up with was what you considered better than what we have. What do we have?
10-foot or 30-foot setbacks from property lines.
Because when the CFO thing came up 5 or 6 years ago, or whenever it was all item. In other words, this is who we were depending on, and it was pretty much an agreed that that's not somebody you want to depend on.
Right.
So,
We're not talking CFO. We're talking from CFO cutoff down.
I understand that.
Those were CFO cutoff up. Larger. We're talking about from that cutoff lower.
I understand that. But what did we have before this? Or below the item standards?
Nothing but shorter setbacks.
Okay.
The same as if, somebody wants to build a factory next to your house, or, whatever permitted use in that zoning. Can be, like Chris said, either 10 foot or 30 foot from the property line. That's what we have currently.
That's part of the reason I asked to have a committee to look at these, because these smaller animal feeding operations are coming more popular. Because before it was just big ones, and now they're kind of skirting by and going these little ones. That's why we got to do something here. So, kind of part of the reason we're even doing the committee and why we're looking at this right now. So.
I was just recently made aware of a bill that passed, that got signed into law in the beginning of March, that changes kind of the structure of IDEM a little bit, who's in charge, and rolls back to some different things. And I've tried looking at the language just real quickly, but there's a lot to read. So I think we need to see how that's going to play out too. If we go back to this in the future, then there will be time to see, are there any changes in what IDEM is doing for counties? Because the person who told me about it said it's a bad rollback, but I don't know if that's true or not.
Not to get on the subject with the government. The governor wants both the chem department and the item to roll back to save money. And that's part of it, less regulation. That's part of his.
That's what I'm concerned about.
That's part of his bill, because they've had a lot of discussions. I've had some discussions, and that's one of the things they're trying to do is less control.
Yeah. So,
And they're not trying to push it on us to do it, or they might be, but that's one of the things, so, okay. Well, are we gonna wrap this up and have a vote, or?
We need to go through the jurisdictional finding, and then the matters to consider that Mr. Cruz is going to lead us through.
Yes, all right. Well, I'll start here with the jurisdictional findings. And the first one I'll ask Meredith about is the petitioner has complied. Well, first, I'll say for everybody in the public that these are findings in UDO and statutory matters that are not final until there's a vote. These are just discussions. So the first one is that the petitioner has complied with the rules and regulations of the Plan Commission in filing appropriate forms and reports. Legal notice published in the Star on May 8th, 2026, and publisher's affidavit given to staff.
Yes.
All right. So I'll go ahead and just start with these. There are 5 here on the sheet of UDO and statutory matters to consider. And the process for this is I will go ahead and read the question, then anyone that wants to can have comments on it. There's short yes or no answer on it, but if you're able to give a comment to it, that would be also helpful as we go along here. Number 1 is the change in text proposed here in harmony with the current comprehensive plan, yes or no?
Yes, I think it It's gonna improve the harmony. It makes the restrictions a little better, a little easier, that we can control some more, the closest to the neighbors.
Yeah, I would also say yes, because it's an already permitted use, and we're just kind of tweaking the characters of that use.
All right, we've got number 2. Is this change in text proposed consistent with the current conditions and the character of current structures and uses in each zoning district?
Yes, as Jason indicated, we're still using the same, we're actually creating a little more clarity about and definition in what's allowed in each zoning district, and as evidenced by some of the newer developments, that they are mostly or all within meeting what the current standards are, what the proposed standards are.
And it is consistent because we're talking about ag uses in ag zoning districts.
All right, number 3, does the change in the text help with the most desirable use for which the land in each zoning district is adapted?
I'll say yes, relying heavily on help, the word help, with the most desirable conditions.
Okay, all right. Number 4, will the change in the text promote the conservation of property values throughout the jurisdiction?
I think this is an improvement from the current standard with respect to conservation of property values.
Moving in the right direction is kind of. Okay. Number 5, will the change in text promote responsible growth and development?
Yes, because it's going to set setbacks for responsible growth.
And I think it'll help guide, maybe not guide, but it'll help eliminate some potential places where these buildings should not go based on distance available. So I think it promotes responsible growth by kind of putting a little guardrails in where some of these buildings can and can't go.
All right, back to you, Mr. President.
Okay, for any text amendment such as this, we're looking for a motion for a favorable recommendation, a motion for an unfavorable recommendation, or a motion for no recommendation to the planning, or to the county commissioners from the planning commission.
And perhaps any conditions someone might want to suggest
Yeah,
for revisiting things if someone wants to motion it.
Yeah, the petition on the table is to clean up the definitions and impose a 100-foot setback. That's the current language.
I think if someone wants to propose also some requests for the committee to look at other potential regulations, I think it would be better for the record if that was done in a separate motion and separate vote.
I would agree.
Yep.
We will open up the floor for any such motion.
I'll make that motion and we move on.
Your motion is for a favorable recommendation?
Oh. Yeah, for favorable recommendation. I forgot about it.
I will second that.
Okay, we have a motion and a second for a favorable recommendation for the stated text amendments to the county commissioners. We have a roll call vote, please.
Yes. Callan Dooley?
Yes.
Bill Van Wy?
Yes.
Jerry Yoder?
No.
Frank Pulver?
No.
Suzanne Davis?
Yes.
Angie Holt?
Yes.
Jason Carnahan?
Yes.
What is the total?
6-2.
Okay.
Do we have any other motions for?
5-2. 5-2.
Yep, 5-2.
5-2, okay, all right.
I'll make the motion for the committee to research some more into the ideas that were brought up today.
Do we have a second? Okay. We're going to do another roll call vote?
Yep. Callan Dooley?
Yes.
Bill Van Wy? Jerry Yoder?
Yes.
Frank Pulver?
Yes.
Suzanne Davis,
Yes?
Angie Holt,
Yes.
Jason Carnahan.
Yes. Okay. So that will be heard at the next commissioners meeting? Yes? Correct? 20, what did I say, 26th?
Tuesday.
So that will be heard at the 26th commissioners meeting. Is there any other new business? Do we have any reports from officers, committees, town liaisons, et cetera?
The Auburn Plan Commission had 2 meetings because of the way our schedule was. So in April, they had a petition for doing a new section for the Bridgewater addition, and it would be south of Morningstar Road, and it would be a 43-lot, single-family, 43 lots, yeah, single-family homes. And they will extend Virginia Lane all the way up to Morningstar now. And they talked about putting a stoplight or stop sign in there. But that got approved. And then in May, the only item on the agenda was just to approve for the Fortify Field House that's on County Road 427, just to do parking lot improvement. So that was it. Nothing controversial.
Waterloo has been working on the improvement location permit application. I don't know if, I think they're still working on it. I don't know if those have been solidified based on the previous input from some of the other towns and cities. We did have a zoning approval change for Hoham Farms and Benchmark Distribution Terminal to be able to extend the rail line to, they currently have a heavy industrial property. It's in the ETJ. And there were areas zoned agricultural and, I guess agricultural that they approved to move to heavy industrial to adjoining properties. It's surrounded by agricultural, and there is one residence there that's also adjacent to the current heavy open industrial, but that was approved, that zoning change.
Sandy's the other ones, so. Then we should have no more. Is there any comments on any other matters from any public in the attendance tonight? Seeing none, we will stand adjourned.